The grand marble floors of Harrington Academy gleamed under the pre-dawn light, reflecting the silent, sweeping strokes of Leo, the janitor. His movements were a quiet rhythm, a solitary dance against the opulent backdrop, upholding a grandeur that wasn't his own. Later that morning, in their small, cozy kitchen, Leo prepared breakfast for his son, Liam. "Dad, my presentation on ancient civilizations is today." Liam beamed, his eyes bright with innocent excitement. Leo smiled, a warmth spreading through him that momentarily eclipsed his weariness. Every scrubbed floor, every late night was for this boy, for his chance at Harrington. Back at Harrington, the grand hall buzzed with frantic energy. Event planners in crisp suits directed bustling staff, arranging glittering chandeliers and velvet drapes for the annual donors gala. Leo, in his simple janitor's uniform, moved through the flurry, a ghost in the opulent theater. He was part of the machinery, yet utterly invisible, observing a world that remained just out of reach. Meet the woman who believes her wealth buys her absolute power. The grand hall hummed with the arrival of Veronica Sterling. She swept in, a dazzling comet of designer silk and diamonds, her presence an undeniable force. Heads turned, conversations paused, and an almost imperceptible ripple of deference spread through the gala guests. Veronica moved with an air of entitlement, her gaze skimming over the service staff, the silent figures making her evening possible, without a hint of recognition. Leo, blending into the shadows near a polished column, felt the chill of her dismissive aura, just another invisible worker in her orbit. An innocent moment shattered by a cruel critique. In a smaller presentation room, Liam, Leo's son, stood at a podium, his young voice trembling slightly but filled with the earnest pride of his project. Leo watched from the back, a quiet smile playing on his lips, his heart swelling with a father's hope. But the moment was not truly private. Veronica Sterling, attending as a distinguished guest, sat near the front. As Liam concluded, her voice, sharp and clear, cut through the polite applause. A rather pedestrian effort, wouldn't you say? Lacks any real ambition. The words hung in the air, a poisoned dart aimed directly at a child's vulnerable spirit. The accident that ignites a public power play. A sharp, sickening splash echoed through the stunned silence. As Veronica turned to exit, her hand, laden with glittering rings, accidentally swept her expensive cocktail from the table. The crimson liquid spread across the pristine marble floor like a spreading stain. Her eyes, cold and calculating, immediately darted to Leo, who stood frozen, a silent witness to the deliberate chaos. A powerful woman's cruel demand leaves a man speechless. With a condescending smile that didn't reach her eyes, Veronica pointed a perfectly manicured finger at the spreading mess. "Janitor, clean this up immediately," she commanded, her voice ringing with an authority that expected instant obedience. She spoke to Leo not as a human being, but as an extension of the spilled drink, a tool to be deployed. The assembled guests shifted uncomfortably, some looking away, others watching the spectacle unfold, while Leo felt the public gaze burn into his very soul. With trembling hands, Leo retrieved cleaning supplies. He knelt, the harsh fluorescent light glinting off the spilled liquid, and began to scrub. Veronica Sterling watched, a cruel smile playing on her lips. "Perhaps next time you'll be more attentive, cleaner," she purred, ensuring all witnessed the spectacle. Every swipe was a fresh cut to his dignity. But not everyone looked away. Anya Sharma, a civil rights lawyer, watched from a corner. Her face showed clear disgust, her jaw tight. She saw the deliberate cruelty, not just a spill. A flicker of cold resolve ignited in her eyes, a silent promise. Her hand subtly retrieved a business card. The gala continued, a blur of shimmering dresses. Leo, his spirit heavy, finished his shift in a daze. The weight of his uniform was an unbearable burden. He walked out into the cold night, the Grand Academy shrinking behind him. Invisible, defeated, and utterly alone, he felt the world had reminded him of his place. The next morning, the small apartment was heavy, with a silence that wasn't peaceful. Leo moved through the kitchen, preparing breakfast, his movements slower, his usual quiet hum absent. He tried to force a smile as Liam, his bright-eyed son, chattered about a new book. But the exhaustion in Leo's eyes, the slight tremor in his hands, was visible. Liam paused, his spoon halfway to his mouth. "Dad, are you okay?" The innocent question pierced through Leo's carefully constructed facade, a fresh wave of pain washing over him. Later that morning, after Liam had left for school, Leo sat at their worn kitchen table. A small pile of overdue bills lay before him, a stark reminder of his precarious reality. He stared at them, but his mind replayed the gala scene. Veronica Sterling's sneering face, the cold command, the public spectacle of his humiliation. He felt utterly broken, his dignity not just bruised, but shattered into 1,000 pieces. How could one person's cruelty steal so much? The powerlessness was a suffocating weight. His hand, resting idly on the table, brushed against the jacket he'd worn the night before, still draped over a chair. A faint crinkle of paper caught his attention. He reached into the pocket, his fingers closing around a crisp, unfamiliar card. As he pulled it out, a fleeting image flashed in his mind. A woman in the corner of the presentation room, her gaze sharp, unwavering, as Veronica's cruel words echoed. He hadn't thought about her since. At the small kitchen table, amidst the quiet despair, Leo's fingers brushed against the forgotten business card in his jacket pocket. He pulled it out, a crisp rectangle of hope in his calloused hand. Anya Sharma, attorney at law. It read. A flicker of something, a distant memory of a woman watching, stirred within him. Could a piece of paper truly challenge Veronica Sterling? Could a quiet janitor with nothing but a bruised spirit stand against a titan of wealth and influence? The thought felt absurd, almost laughable. He felt too small, too insignificant to even consider it. His hand hovered over the small trash bin beneath the table. The card seemed to hum with a dangerous energy, a promise of a fight he wasn't sure he could win. What if it made things worse? What if Veronica found out and retaliated, not just against him, but against Liam, against their precarious existence? The fear was a cold knot in his stomach. It would be easier to just disappear, to let the humiliation fade into the silent corners of his memory. Just then, Liam padded into the kitchen, his eyes bright with morning sleep. "Papa, can we practice my presentation again today?" he asked, a hopeful lilt in his voice. Leo looked at his son's trusting face, a fresh wave of love and fierce protection washing over him. This wasn't just about him. It was about the example he set, the dignity he could reclaim, not just for himself, but for Liam. He couldn't teach his son to stand tall if he himself had bent so low. With a deep, shuddering breath that filled his lungs with a newfound resolve, Leo picked up his worn phone. His hand trembled slightly, but his gaze was steady on the number printed on Anya Sharma's card. The simple act of dialing felt like lifting a mountain. The first ring echoed in the silent apartment, a small tremor that promised a coming earthquake. Leo, clutching his worn cap, stepped into Anya Sharma's office. The polished mahogany and towering legal tomes felt alien, but Anya rose, her gaze steady and kind. "Mr. Morales," she said, her voice a calm counterpoint to his racing heart. "Thank you for coming. Please, sit. There's no rush." Her quiet empathy was a balm, a gentle invitation to a space where, perhaps, his dignity could finally breathe. With a hesitant breath, Leo began to speak, words tumbling out, raw and heavy with the weight of the previous night. He recounted the grand hall, Liam's nervous pride, Veronica Sterling's cutting remark, and the cold splash. He relived the kneeling, the demeaning comments, the stifling shame. Anya listened, her pen motionless, her eyes fixed. As he spoke of Veronica's cruel smile, a flicker of indignation crossed Anya's face, a silent promise of understanding. When Leo finished, a profound silence filled the room. Anya leaned forward, her voice firm. "Mr. Morales," she stated, "what you experienced was a blatant abuse of power, an attack on your dignity. It was wrong." She offered to represent him, pro bono. Leo, overwhelmed by gratitude and a surge of hope, accepted. This was about reclaiming his very self, a fight for more than just a job. The quiet hum of Anya Sharma's office replaced the usual sounds of Harrington Academy for Leo. Days after their first meeting, he sat across from Anya, a pile of documents between them. Together, they meticulously gathered evidence, building a case not just on law, but on human dignity. Leo, who once felt invisible, now found his voice, recounting the gala's humiliating details. Anya listened, her gaze sharp, transforming his pain into a weapon for justice. The quiet janitor became a key player in his own fight. High above the city, in her gleaming skyscraper office, Veronica Sterling remained oblivious. She conducted business as usual, the memory of a spilled drink and a janitor a distant, irrelevant annoyance. Her world revolved around power and profit, and the petty incident at the gala was beneath her notice. From her vantage point, the struggles of the unseen were simply not her concern. She forgot him. But he remembered everything. A soft knock interrupted Veronica's afternoon. Her assistant entered, a stiff expression on his face, and placed a large formal envelope on her polished desk. Veronica tore it open with an impatient flick of her wrist. As her eyes scanned the legal notice, her face contorted in disbelief, then quickly twisted into pure rage. Leo. The janitor. His name, once so insignificant, now burned like a brand. The billionaire's world was about to be shaken. The opulent conference room was a stark battleground. Veronica Sterling's lawyers, sharp-suited and radiating casual disdain, sat across from Leo and Anya. They offered a paltry settlement, a sum meant to silence, not to compensate. Their words dripped with condescension, suggesting Leo simply move on. But Leo, bolstered by Anya's quiet strength, met their gaze. He was no longer the invisible janitor. His voice, though soft, carried an unwavering resolve as he refused their offer, his refusal echoing with a dignity money could not buy. Back in Anya's office, the tension eased, but Leo's determination remained. "It's not about the money, Anya," he explained, his eyes fixed on a distant point. "It's about what I teach, Liam. About standing up for what's right, even when it's scary. About not letting someone take away your worth." Anya listened, a respectful nod affirming her complete understanding. His principled stance, born of a father's love and a man's quiet courage, solidified their path forward. The news of the janitor versus the billionaire donor exploded. Headlines screamed. Social media feeds buzzed with trending hashtags. People shared their own stories of disrespect. A feeling invisible, Leo's quiet fight became a rallying cry, a symbol for every unseen worker, every slighted soul. The public, tired of unchecked power, rallied behind him, transforming a personal injustice into a collective demand for respect. Finally, the day arrived. The grand courtroom, usually a bastion of measured decorum, was packed. Every seat taken, every eye fixed on the opposing tables. Leo, sitting beside Anya, held himself with newfound composure. Across the aisle, Veronica Sterling, her face a mask of barely contained fury, watched him. Two worlds, diametrically opposed, were about to collide in a fight for a principle far greater than any sum of money. His quiet voice filled the grand courtroom, a stark contrast to the opulence that had once silenced him. Leo spoke not with vengeance, but with the raw, honest pain of that humiliating night. He described Veronica Sterling's sneering command, the burning shame of kneeling before a crowd, the feeling of being stripped of his very worth. A collective gasp rippled through the room. Even some of Veronica's own staff, seated in the gallery, wiped away tears, while Veronica herself shifted uncomfortably, her carefully constructed composure cracking under the weight of his truth. The air in the courtroom crackled with anticipation as the jury foreman delivered their decision. "We find in favor of the plaintiff, Mr. Leo Rodriguez." A collective sigh of relief, then a triumphant murmur swept through the gallery. Veronica Sterling's face contorted in a mask of disbelief and incandescent fury, but Leo, beside Anya, felt only a profound, quiet peace. A silent, knowing glance passed between them. A victory not just of law, but of spirit. As sunlight finally streamed onto the courthouse steps, Leo emerged, not as a janitor, but as a man who had stood tall for his truth. Liam, his son, rushed to his side, clutching his hand. With Anya by his other side, Leo felt a profound peace, a quiet joy. He hadn't just won a case, he had reclaimed his dignity, and in doing so, taught his son the most valuable lesson of all, that every voice, no matter how quiet, deserves to be heard.